I want you to know that this conversation I'm about to have with you is the most personal I've ever gotten with a room full of people. And it's been something that Yuli and I have talked about for 3 years. Because as women in technology, as leaders, you know what we don't ever do? We don't ever really tell our story. We tell a version of our story. We tell the version that fits to where we are. But today, I'm going to tell you about me. And so we're going to start it off with, I've spent a lot of years in corporate. And in those corporate, there's always these sessions where you have to do these workshops, right? And it's like the one that I've done probably 4 or 5 times is you have to define your spirit animal, right? Like, come on, people. What is your, so you're like, am I an eagle soaring? Am I maybe I'm a panther, all ready to pounce and aggressive, or a tiger. And I have been all of those things in very different sessions, depending on what company I was at. But if I'm being totally truthful, what is my spirit animal? The majestic, the one and only chameleon. Oh, yeah. Now, fun fact about chameleons. Well, 2 fun facts about chameleons. First, they do not change their color for their surroundings. No, people, they change their color based on an emotional input. Okay, so if the leaf is green, they don't go green. Maybe they go green because they're scared, or they go red because they're excited. The second fun fact about chameleons is their tongue is actually twice the length of their body. So, good news is I am not a chameleon in that way, because that would be weird. But I want to talk about why, a little bit, in all vulnerability and honesty, why this is my spirit animal. And it's really because of a very unique upbringing. So, we are all the product of our childhood, and we've just heard some amazing stories, heartfelt stories about upbringing and perseverance and triumph. I don't know if I would really say mine was that, but it was different because I had very, very rich grandparents I'm from Toronto, Canada, and in Toronto, the upper class all go on their summers to a place called Muskoka. So I spend my summers in Muskoka, but I am the child of Peter and Joan Joel, who are hippies. The house was full of love, maybe not a lot of money. So on one hand, I can talk about the golf and the summers in Muskoka, and, I can make it, how you can sound rich without ever saying you had money? But then, baby, you drop some Biggie, some Tupac, and I'm that girl from Scarborough that likes to get down, that likes to party, that could talk my way into every kind of trouble, and I did. And so what that did for me is I was just able to, at any moment be anything, and truly the world was my oyster. I mean, I was beautiful. At 16, when I say I could stop traffic, I actually mean literally. I would looking all good, all dressed up, and I would walk out in the street and people would stop. And I could go to bars and I could pick up men, women, you name it, because I could relate. Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they working class? I had all the stories, and I had everything. And I was athletic. So in Canada, we have provinces, made provincials, multiple sports, smart. Everything was going great until. When I say crash, I don't mean it figuratively. I mean the drunk guy from Saturday night who was still drunk on Sunday morning at 11, who smashed into our car when I was 16 and a half, changed my life. And I have 2 lovely children and a loving husband. And if you ask my kids, what are 2 things that we say in our house, I'll give you 2 sayings. One is, people are assholes. And the second is, never underestimate the kindness of strangers. And that first saying came from this, because I was popular, I was good at sport, and I lay in that hospital bed. And I heard the doctors talk about walking like it was an if. And people are assholes a little bit. That big group of friends I had, you know who's not very much fun? 16-year-old who's lying in the bed that's in the dining room because I can't manage stairs. And it took a really long time of hard work to get back to walking, to running, to being able to focus on something other than the pain, because I had my 4 lower vertebrae were crushed. I had a broken hip. And I think that at the end of the day, science and medicine has really changed. And we know now about rehab, and we understand about overall health and mental well-being. But frankly, aging myself a bit, that wasn't the discussion. It was like, you just, okay, here's your exercises. And so I spent a year. I had to change schools because the school I went to was far away, and I couldn't manage a bus ride, and I couldn't manage all those things. And so I had to chart a different path. And it took me a while to find that person again, that person who liked to party, that person who loved her hip hop and loved people. But I did, because hope, it's always there, it's in us. We're just, sometimes there's layers of hurt that cover it up. And so 17 and a half, everyone's talking about university. What are you gonna do? Well, the one thing I will say about my family is we are engineers. 3rd generation. My father went to Queen's University, which is a wonderful university, electrical engineering. And so when he said, what are you gonna do? I said, engineering. And he, with absolute love in his eyes and pride in his voice, he said, honey, you got a 52% average in grade 11. Hard truths are hard to hear. And he was right. But he was wrong. Because I was like, fuck that. Like, what am I doing? If you can go to university, and I hear about this university, and you've got all these friends, and all these stories of all these parties and all these cool things you did, I want that, and I'm gonna get that. And so I dedicated myself to the pursuit. And I needed an 87.3 average. To be clear, I got an 87.3 average. I took courses twice. I went to summer. I mean, I did everything and anything, and I got into that program, and damn, I was proud of myself. And I was excited. And I was like, this is going to be, I'm going to make those friends for life. I love my dad's friends. They're awesome. And I'm going to do all those things. And I walked into first year electrical engineering at Queen's University. And it was not the fairy book that I thought it was going to be. Because here's what it was. It was 120 guys and us 4 girls, 2 of which who dropped out before Christmas the first year. And so you think, okay, is this like the start of some like cool, like, you know, romantic comedy where the pretty girl, she comes in, she sits down in class, there's this cute boy, cute girl, whatever, right? Yeah, no. Nobody talked to me. They acted like I did not exist. And it was fucking awful. I spent 2 years in this course, and I do not give up. I do not give up. And I kept thinking, you know what? This path in front of me, I got this. I can do this. Maybe if I work a little harder, maybe if I, meet that person who's going to take me there. And it's interesting because the other day, one of the podcasts I listened to is something called Philosophize This. And my husband has many interesting quirks about him, and he loves philosophy. So we listened to this. And this particular episode was talking about back in the day, take 200 years ago. You were either born into nobility or you were a peasant, one of two options. But if you were a peasant, a farmer, it's not like there was a pursuit to be the best farmer. Like, it wasn't like, your ability to build crops is going to be somehow ranked versus another person's. For sure, you innovated to make your life easier, but there wasn't, and then all of a sudden, fast forward to our lives. And we have this thought that somehow if I work harder, if I study more, I can be richer, I can be happier. If I somehow do all these things, and it creates a weird pressure on us, right? That no one likes to talk about. Because you kind of think if you're not happy, it's your fault because maybe you're not working at it enough. Or maybe you don't meditate enough. Or maybe you don't. Okay. But maybe what we need to be thinking about is what we do. And so I ended up in Hong Kong, which, for those who don't know, is exactly halfway across the world from Toronto. And that's why I picked it. Literally, I was like, I'm going halfway around the world. And in the islands of Hong Kong, which are beautiful for those who have had the pleasure and the honor of going there, there was this tranquility. And I was alone in a different way than I always felt alone. I always felt alone, but I was just always around people, right? And I was projecting this image, and I was creating this image because I'm a chameleon, and that is my gift. But there was no image to project. I didn't really understand any of the conversations around me. People just didn't even know what to do with me. I was taller than literally everybody. And in that moment, I had to be honest with myself. And I think we all have those moments, right? Where it's like, you just can't bullshit even a bullshitter, right? And it was like, okay, I hate engineering. If I have to look at another capacitor or do another fucking physics lab, I'm gonna shoot myself. So maybe I should do something else, right? And the one thing I really enjoyed were the development courses, because I'm by nature a creative person. And what a lot of people who don't code don't realize is how creative the process is. Your canvas is bits and bytes, but it's still a canvas. And you create from nothing. That's fucking magic, people. And this world I was so excited about. And so I pursued it. So I came back, changed my major. I was able to apply over my courses. And then I made another decision. I don't really like where I am. I know it's a big university. Everybody has all these university friends. I went to Hong Kong and missed nobody from the university. And so I was like, then admit defeat. It's not working for you. So I did one more year. And then all my courses I could do through correspondence. And I came home. I came home to Toronto, which is, for those who have not been to Toronto, I'm going to make a pitch. I'm a hometown girl. It is a beautiful city because growing up, there is every ethnicity. You cannot go to a restaurant that doesn't have some background that's different, and it's fun, and it's exciting, and the parties and the clubs. And so I was like, okay, I'm coming home. And I did. And in coming home, I met my husband, and we have 2 beautiful children. And, right, so and I kind of felt like this is what I was always supposed to do. Okay, I'm now a mom. I got a great job. I'm going to work. And I am not going to make the same mistake that I did that first day walking into engineering when I was dressed to the nines and I was like, sauntered my little ass into that, lecture hall, and everybody was just like, what are you, right? I was not going to do that. No. I went into first day, I looked at what everyone was wearing, and I wore it too. Little suit, right? Little jacket. I had my little collared shirt. And I emulated what everybody wanted me to be. And I was a mom, and I didn't get a lot of sleep, and life goes on, right? Like, it just, and you get job after job, and you're like moving up the corporate ladder, and you're really proud of yourself. But as that happened, as I moved up that corporate ladder, I did kind of a weird thing. It was like I separated myself. There was me, the mom. She had a definition. She had a speech. She had ways to connect. And then there was Kerry, the businesswoman. Oh, yeah. And she was going to take over by storm. And I had all the resume, and I knew what my resume needed to look like, and I worked that. And somehow, in all of that, I lost me. But maybe I didn't lose me because maybe I didn't even know who I was, because I'd been for so long for everybody else. And this is at the time when cloud computing came in. And it was, for those of you who remember it, I was working at RBC, which is Royal Bank of Canada. It's a big bank. And I was given the honor of running one of the big programs for cloud. And I had all the buzzwords. I had it all down, right? I could speak it, but the problem was I didn't know it anymore. It had been 15 years since I'd written a line of code. And back in those days, shockingly, we'd go out a lot at night with a bunch of people, and we'd talk about technology and all this stuff. And I remember being a little drunk and talking to a colleague, and I'm like, if anybody was smart, what they would do is they would use cloud, and they would use it for arbitrage and blah, 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 blah. And I had a whole spiel, right? And he was like, you should do that. I was like, yeah, sure. Except for in my heart, I didn't think I could do it. And this isn't imposter syndrome, because imposter syndrome is you can actually do it, you just don't believe you can. This is actually, I didn't know how to do it. I couldn't code it. And the next morning, through a very nasty hangover, I get this email. And the email was, here's a login to our cloud sandbox. Here's a couple places that I would start, and you should do that. It took me a week to sign in, but I did. I did it quietly. I didn't tell anybody, and I had to learn again. And the first step to that learning was admitting I didn't know how to do it. And that armor that I had built up, those words that I could speak, I needed to be able to have different words. I needed to be able to say, I don't understand. I don't know. And that doesn't mean that I can't do this job or I can't do the next job that's up on the ladder. It just means I need help. And what was incredible about that was it got me to the next level. So all of a sudden, the first time I really said, I don't know, was the first time I got my VP title. Kind of weird, but true. And we are a creature of habit. And my habit was putting an armor on. And once I got in that world that I did not understand, I started again with that armor. I started that separation of church and state. And I was the executive. I had the executive speak. And I went forward with that. But the problem with that was I didn't stop. I didn't stop and say, but what is cloud technology doing for society, for you? I was just using it to get my next job, to move forward the organization in a super positive way. Like, I was genuine. I know cloud technology can make a difference, but it was like I just was rinse and repeat. And that brings me to this conference last year. I was CIO of Tangerine Bank. Damn, I was proud of that title. Because you know what? I'd worked 20 plus years to get there. I'd sacrificed a lot. And when I put my talk together, they were like, yeah, no. You know what you're not going to do is that. Because you are not you, you are a brand, and that's fair. That is fair. They never claimed that I should be anything but that. But here's the problem. I didn't want to be a brand of an organization. I wanted to be me. And then it was like, oh boy, now what do I do? Because you know what's a bitch? Age. Some of you may notice I changed. I was in a very, very work-appropriate dress. It was purple, it matched with our colors. I love that. So when do you stop feeling sexy? When do you stop looking sexy? When is that conversation allowed where people aren't cringing that you're actually having that conversation? My favorite thing when I talk about age, you know what people say to me? Oh, don't worry, you're still pretty. You're still pretty. But let's just take that apart because words matter. You're not going to be pretty. You're not going to be relevant, right? You're still pretty. You still have relevance. Because what? What is it about age that scares us so much? Well, of course, it's our own mortality. It's losing that passion. But I will tell you this. With experience, I look back at that 16-year-old girl who could pick up anything in any bar, and it wasn't my beauty. I have an energy and a passion for people. That's what people were attracted to. And you know what hasn't changed? That. I can hold that in my heart, and it doesn't matter what I look like. I'll be that 9-year-old woman who's hilarious because age is not a thing for me. But just as I had to rehabilitate myself when I was young, the work never stops. I had to be honest with myself. I hated my job. And you know what you are at jobs that you don't like? Terrible. Like, terrible. You do a job that is truly not something you like to do, and you will be bad at it, I promise you. So then the antithesis of that has to be true. But how do you find that job that inspires you? And for me, when I started understanding Gen AI and the transformative nature of what it can do, I was like, I can't do it just at one company. I can't just be here and doing it. And I had the privilege of being friends with a killer woman who never apologizes for wearing, what are those, 4-inch snakeskin green heels? Come on, ladies. A hand of applause for those boots. But here is fundamentally the scariest thing I ever did. I went to this woman who is a cherished friend, who I look up to, and I said, so I want to work for you. Now, my timing could have been a little better because if I recall, it was like 11 o'clock at night after we'd been having a few drinks, if I recall. There was not an executive recruiter to tell her why I was going to be good at it. And let's be honest, nobody was good at Gen AI because no one was doing it. But I had to sell it. I had to take the work. Just like all those years back in rehab, I had to make the decision about what I wanted to do to create a job that I was passionate about. And I am if nothing else, passionate about AI. But here's what I'm even more passionate about, is we've got to have real conversations. We've got to be genuine in our vulnerability. We've got to be able to talk about how scary it is to get old, and how frightening it is not to know something, and how hard it is to stand up at a corporate event talking about something when you've had 4 minutes to think about it and you have to look like the expert. Because we don't ever stop, right? We say we support each other, but do we? During all of this existential crisis, unfortunately, our family had a real one. My daughter started getting sick, tired. 16-year-old, plays competitive hockey. People are like, oh, she's just tired. Okay. Turns out she's not just tired. She had cancer. And I watched this beautiful creature who wakes up with the sun, who has energy and passion. I'll say she gets it from her mom. And the Canadian system is a lot of things, equality and access, but not vertical in depth always. And we did not have the ability to get her treated. And so finally I was like, fuck this. And I was like, we're flying down to Tampa, because in Tampa is the best clinic with the best doctor, and everybody at that place was experts. And unfortunately, because how hard it was to diagnose it, she'd been through some traumas. And for the mothers in the room, you know all you ever want to do is protect your girl. I couldn't. And she went through trauma, and then she wasn't really great about treatment, which made the whole thing worse. And we're in Tampa, her and I, and she loses it. I mean, I did not have the words. And she called her 14-year-old baby brother, and he did. He said, in a way that made her calm down, he said, "You are the strongest woman I know, and you've got this." And then he started showing cute cat pictures, and she started laughing, and she was all right. And in that moment, I understood what sister is. I understood what sisterhood can bring, and it is nothing I will ever take for granted. And what today is about is that sisterhood. You don't have to be trying to get someone over cancer, but we need to come together in honest support and in vulnerability. And the next day, when we went into the hospital, she was very brave until it started the actual treatment. And then the words of her brother faded. And there was this nurse. The procedure should have taken, the prep part of it should have taken 20 minutes. An hour and 30 minutes later, they had decided that they were going to make this better. And the only word I can use to describe it is grace. One of my words, I love to write, I creatively write, words matter to me. Grace. The definition for me is different than for others. I love the saying, by the grace of God. It brings comfort and joy into people's lives, but that's not my definition. My definition is grace honors presence. And that is what this nurse showed. They honored her in that moment of need. They understood the vulnerability, and they got her through that in a way that I couldn't. And I sat there and I heard this moment where somebody reached out and touched another's lives. And there was a light, there was a passion. And look, it was literally the ability to do a biopsy without hurting. But what all of us have this magical gift that we don't even always know we have. And so what I encourage you today is know your magic, know your light, and don't hide it. Because together, that light comes and we can be so much more in sisterhood and for ourselves. So thank you for letting me share this story, and I hope that you will take from it that moment of being, that shine, what I watch every day in what Yuli brings. She never apologizes. She brings energy and vitality, and you can too. So while you're here, find that light, share it, let's support each other, and have a wonderful conference.